morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it is the CEO series. We've been called a masterclass for leadership development. Our guest today is a very dear friend, Paul Gledhill, often referred to as the Godfather of HR Learning technologies in the Middle East. His career has taken him from working in the travel industry in exotic locations around the world to becoming a pioneer force in digital learning. He co-founded Expert Learning in Dubai, an e-learning service and solution provider. He recently sold that to Leoron Institute. He remains a strategic advisor. He's also co-founded Middle East HR and Learning, an online publishing platform supporting thousands of HR learning professionals in the Middle East. And with that, I'd like to introduce my dear friend from a long, long time ago, Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hey, mate. We're giving all these secrets of how old we are now. Like, you kick off with that. Yeah, we go back way back. So, look, it's well overdue, right? So we gotta catch up. It's great to see you, man. You're looking just as young as you did before, man. You look fantastic.
Thank you so much. That felt cool hearing that. You know, to give the audience some background, the last time we were together was pre-COVID, out on your boat, and we were just cooling out one afternoon in Dubai, you know, going through, and I think we went up to Business Bay and came back. A great afternoon. But what I want to talk about is that I wanted to get a little more into your journey. One of the key points of the show is to try and understand successful people, in quotes. How did all that come about? How did you start from university to where you are today? So walk us through that.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. It feels like a long journey. And I guess sometimes you don't really know how that strung together. So let me kick off with you know, where I'm from. And I am a coal miner's son in a poor town in the UK. So we didn't really have a lot growing up, and it was rough and tough and tumble. And school was, you know, I'm kind of going through 60s and 70s here, where teachers knew how to kind of punish, and you know, parents had that. You know, it was just a strong, hard ruling. And I just think, you know, the guys were around today. What would they be thinking about how, you know, we address kind of, you know, corporal punishment? They had some tools, man. And it was incredible. And I guess for me, and yet with that, I felt that I was, you know, in a very loved environment, and I really enjoyed it. And again, I have no qualms about the way that things were then. Obviously, it couldn't be like that now. But academically, you know, I didn't do great, and I kind of excelled at rock and roll. I wanted to be a guitarist, and I sort of, you know, really felt that I was good at sports and things like that. So maybe that's why a bunch of us always got picked on, because, you know, we were an easy target. We could handle it, you know, and they didn't mind, you know, giving us a hard time. And then from school, so my father said to me, you know, whatever you do, you're not going down to the coal mine. So the next best thing to that in the town I grew up was a chemical factory, right? So he wanted me to be an apprentice. And I think it's interesting that I went down the electrical engineering route, because I think that was almost sort of how a lot of my mindset around problem solving was created. So I went down the electrical engineer as an apprentice. I did 4 years apprenticeship. I fell more into the kind of, it was new for having PCs weren't around there. Obviously, the internet wasn't around. So when PCs came in, I was involved in, you know, the hardware side and building motherboards and all the kind of bits and pieces, and then the software and coding. Yeah, exactly. So you got kind of, I've got this kind of obsessive nature, is if I'm going to go into something, I'm going to put those 10,000 hours in. And then, you know, after the sort of apprenticeship, I kind of felt that I wasn't in the right place. There's something just not right. This is not where I need to be, and I needed to be somewhere else. I wanted, you know, sunshine and a little bit more of a, you know, a relaxing environment. And we took a trip there was a couple of the guys that got paid. I think we got paid $1,000 to, to leave and take early redundancy. And so we're going from England to Holland, because I thought if I spend everything, at least I can swim back, because it's not too far. Then we found that was too cold. So we moved down to the south of France. And here's I've seen your interviews before, and you're looking for these pivotal moments. So I was doing odd jobs here and there. And I got into a job in a campsite in Antibes in the south of France. And it was basically, I was quite a shy and quiet guy, and I'd go in and repair the fridges and the lights and things like that. And then one day, there was a tour guide that was sick, and there was 40 people on a coach waiting to go for a trip to Saint-Tropez. And they went, let's get the Sparky onto the bus. And of course, I'm kind of like, of course, I've done these trips before, and so I know some things here and there, because I used to go there on my days off, but I didn't know the routes. And so anyway, I'm like there just reading the script, and on your left side, ladies and gentlemen, is that. And then after a while, I start to get comfortable with a mic, and I'm looking out, to the view. I'm not thinking there's 40 guys, and I started talking to these people like there was just one friend. I started telling some jokes and having some fun. And literally that was kind of the key for me to gain the confidence that I could actually speak to people and tell stories. And then that's really where, a British tour operator took over that campsite that I was working on. And then I stayed in that tour, in the tourism with British tour companies for about 15 years. Traveling in different places all over the world and moving up to different kind of management levels and setting up, destinations and commercializing sort of the business for these tour operators. So it was fantastic fun, and it was a great sort of journey. But at some point, I felt that I needed to go, back to the UK, and I met my girlfriend and became my wife, and we said, let's go back and get a proper job. So I went back and I was looking at some of these back to work programs, and I went to a kind of an entrepreneur course, start a business. By the time I got to the end of the day, I thought, I never want to do a business. This is hard work. This is it's too much for me. Da, da, da. But the guy at the front of the session, I thought, I want to be this guy.
Yeah.
He's cool, he's all suited and booted. He knows what he's talking about. So at the end of that session, I went up to him and said, look, I'm interested in what you're doing. And is there any sort of programs, anything I can train on? And this was a government program. So from that, I spent 6 years with this government training and business advisory group, literally every day, either on a training course, doing certification, whether it was NEBOSH or National Examination Board stuff, or ILM as it's called now, the Leadership and Management Training Board. So I was really literally going on courses or delivering courses for 6 years. And I remember, I was talking to my wife, and we got the house and settled down. I got the government job. And I said to her, in X amount of years, I'll be retired. And she looked at me and she said, well, is that it? And by coincidence, 2 weeks later, we're going on holiday, because she's still in travel and tourism, so she can still get the trip. So we're still having good holidays. And we come to Dubai. And she said, no, this is it. This is where we should be at, right? And literally 3 months later, we were living here. And after a while, we sold the house. And so that was kind of how we came to Dubai. Wow. And and it seems like it's a bit disjointed in that. But I think here's the irony. When I met my business partner, Janine, and she was talking about starting an e-learning company, I said, well, that's kind of technology, and that's my background. Yeah. But I'm also a trainer, so it seems to make sense. So we founded Expert Learning in 2003 and kicked that can. And we were early. So a lot of the time it's about educating the market. So you can imagine it's a hard sell. Nobody knows what it is until the pandemic, of course. And then everybody needs you. Everybody's all over you. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a great journey. And like you said, we've recently sold it, although we did sell some equity back in 2015 and then in 18. So it's almost, you know, been a plan to eventually, you know, sort of exit. And I guess on the road, I've always had, you know, certain investments that I've come into, you know, whether it's dividends or, you know, part of salary, I've always stocked that away and invested. Yeah. So now I've got, you know, sort of various things that are going on. But yeah, it's been a, you think, well, how the hell does this coal miner's son get into, you know, starting companies and selling companies? And I have no idea, but there must be some sort of thread in all of this, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I wanted to go into, because I never knew the coal miners story behind that. You know, I knew you as Expert Learning. Janine, if you're watching, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. Your partner in working this through. If you look back on all of those changes, which one would you could attribute to the most pivotal moment, who kind of put you on the path, launch pad, to move forward?
Yeah, I don't think it was any particular person. I think it was kind of things that happen.
Okay.
You know, and coincidences of, you know, this is the right time. I'm kind of doing this, and I'm looking for this. And I mean, even the, you know, I said earlier, I had no intention of, you know, starting a company. When I was working in the UK in the government, you know, we were working with a lot of small businesses, and you know, it looked like hell of a work, you know. But then it just seemed that it was the right thing to do at the right time. Yeah. And it was almost a calling, you know, oh, you know, this is e-learning. So what's that? Yeah. Oh, well, it's technology and it's training. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do we do? I don't know, but let's go for it. And so it was one of those. And I think, you know, like with everything else that I've done, whether I'm doing sport, I'm playing musical instruments, whatever I'm doing, you know, driving boats, and I don't just, you know, learn to drive a boat. I go right skipper, full on. I'm gonna get my licenses. I'm gonna go through all the training. And I think once I'm diving into something, I'm all in. So I think with the e-learning thing, that's kind of how that happened.
I want to give a personal note to the audience. The last time we hung out together was on your boat, and we were just kind of cruising around in Dubai, and I got a chance to drive the boat, navigate, whatever you call that. But I was manning the wheels of it.
Yeah, you were the skipper. You were the captain, man.
I was the captain for the afternoon. So we've got to do that again once once I get back. I want
100%.
Yeah, I want to follow up on a question you said. So you had music. So you had a way to kind of put this aside, let me go do my thing. So you had the boating to do that, and you get away from the world's troubles, so to speak. I see the guitar. Walk us through the music and what part music played in calming you down, or a reference point, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, I played from very young, and you know, we had a musical family. My mother could play piano, and I would knock a tune out of anything that I saw, from a tin whistle to anything. And I don't know whether that is part of DNA or it's just the hours you put in. So I played, you know, piano and guitar. Guitar's my real love, though. But I'll have this thing, and then, you know, once you pick up, and I'll probably practice, you know, 10, 15 minutes just on scales or a new genre or whatever. But you're right, it takes you away, and it's almost a, you know, a meditative state that you can get into, but it's such a blessing. And the other thing is that I've always sort of taught my family. So my brother can play, my sister can play, my daughter's now, you know, doing music and producing, and, you know, and I think if you can give that back, then I think it's great. But you're right. I think from, you know, when you're busy, a busy executive, or you're busy around your business, you're all in. So you have to have something. And the other thing is playing golf, because you never master it. You're never going to be, a master as a musician. You're never going to be the perfect golfer. You might have a good round, and then you're losing balls in the trees and the water and all the rest of it. So anything that will take your attention fully and immersively, then I think that's, meditation. Of course, then you'll practice to meditate. So I can do that for 10 minutes anywhere at a busy airport, and I can do it. But it's years of practice to do that. And so I think for me, it's I always have to have some obsession with learning something to almost mastery, and then some things are never complete. So I'm doing Microsoft flight training. And so next time you come, instead of taking you on a boat, we're going to have some flying taxis in Dubai soon. I'm going to be your taxi driver in the air.
When you said that, my heart started beating. I said, no, I don't want the controls of that. I fly enough. I don't want the controls of that. You could walk me through it.
Okay.
You can walk me through it.
Good fun. Yeah, super.
So you mentioned busy executives, busy leaders, time to decompress. Mine is walking. I love to just walk in nature and just listen. I did an interview yesterday for an upcoming podcast, and they said, how do you relax? I said, I walk. Do you listen to music? I said, I listen to music in a different genre. Music I listen to if I'm driving in a car. But if I need to just kind of decompress, I want to go outside and just walk. So I think in finding that way of trying to just let me step back and think, or maybe I don't want to think, but I just want to just observe nature or whatever it is. Did it take you a while when did you realize that was a key point in your success? I say a key point in your success because of the fact you knew that when you got into that zone and you came back to the issues you were dealing with, you had clarity.
Yeah, every time. And it doesn't matter. And I guess really, part of, everything that I've done up to date is to keep fit and healthy. So whether you're walking, or I do a lot of swimming, I train in the gym. And look, I don't hit it hard anymore, but as long as you're doing something that is kind of, releasing the endorphins and taking your mind away, wow, do you ever come back fresher? Yeah. So, and you need to do that, and I'm not somebody that can go on a beach and have a holiday and chill and totally relax. In fact, for many, many years, I go on holiday and it'd take me a week to just unwind. I'd be having a panic attack because I've nothing to do.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's kind of finding things to do. And if I'm going to a holiday destination, what am I going to do when I'm there? And are we going to go, on the beach walking? Are we going to, go jet skiing or whatever it is, boating? So, there has to be another purpose. But I think it's so important to switch off, especially now in the age that we live with the overload and the mental stresses. I think too many people just don't even realize when they're close to burnout. So just it's the constant practice. And look, I'm a health nut. So if anybody tells me, man, you will improve, you will look younger if you eat a walnut off the floor at 10 o'clock every morning, I'm doing it. I don't mind whatever they're saying these days. All the YouTubers.
Yeah.
It's, right. You'll try everything and then you'll pick up the things that work for you. Yeah. And we're all different. So we can keep healthy and fit, both mentally and physically in different ways without killing ourselves. And, because even working out can be stressful if you're going, I'm going to push that extra mile. I'm going to, I'm walking. Right now, I did 15 Ks yesterday. I'm going to walk 25 Ks at speed. You're back to that. That's how I've been with my career about succeeding. You want to build the biggest e-learning company in the Middle East. So that's the goal. So you're striving for that. And I guess I had an upbringing where, from my father, certainly, nothing was good enough. So you kind of, you're always saying, well, you're not going to be good. And on the other balance is my mother saying, just enjoy it. You be the best you can be. And my dad's going, well, you scored three tries in that rugby game, but you missed this guy and you should have hit this guy low. And
you say, thanks.
It's just never good enough, right? So, yeah.
So we talk about mentors. We talk about, and I do a lot of leadership development. And when we go through this exercise and who was a powerful influence, for the most part, it's going to come back to a family structure as opposed to a prior leader or whatever it is. That may come in a second or third. So let's talk about the role that your parents played, your mother was musical and all those kinds of things, and how that still connected you to what you do today. When I pick up my guitar, that started from her and seeing what's happening. Walk us through the importance of finding that mentor. How do you mentor people?
Yeah. Look, I think for me, it's I've been blessed in the fact that I've been able to, get into the space from a learning standpoint. So I've met some fantastic people, and you go to events and you meet authors, and I'm just one that's very curious. So I'll, if you're up doing your thing and you do a session and I'm impressed by that, I think that's how we initially met.
It is.
I'll go over and say, Ron, hey Ron, this was super. And I'm not going to say, oh, can you be my mentor or coach? I'm just going to kind of let's build a friendship, because I kind of respect where you're coming from, and then if I think about the vendor partners we had, you take somebody like Jack Welch, who, I'm a big fan of. And I was really blessed to have Jack in his late 70s do videos with Skillsoft, and then I got to meet him a few times, and then a small group of us had a breakfast with him, and he was telling us all these anecdotes, and and some, by the way, I kind of live by, things like he say, make sure that you manage people out with the same enthusiasm that you manage them in. And I'll go, and I use that all the time. But then he'll say, steal the best talent around from other companies. And I'm not going there, because I don't think that's ethically right. So, but you'll take the best from all of these fantastic, authors and speakers, and I think you'll kind of always glean something. But I don't think there's particularly anybody special. But yeah, always that balance of the hard line from father, the softer, supportive mother influence is been key, I think.
So how do you take on that role at this point in life of mentoring, either because you said you're an investor with companies, you're probably on the board of companies. How do you take that forward? Yeah. So how is your mentorship? What does your mentorship style look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably gathered by my character, I'm pretty open. I think that most of it's about conversation. I think when you're coaching, I think it's asking the right questions and then working on problems. I like collaboration. I think collaboration is fantastic. Even nowadays, you talk about blended learning, collaborating, even with co-pilots and AI, so I've always been a big believer of that. And kind of sharing responsibilities. I've got better at that. I think, you think you're the best sales guy, you think that you're the best marketing guy. And then you find through that, as you get into 30 and 40 people on the team and it's growing, you go, wait a minute, this guy's so much better than me. So I kind of learned to, learn from people and saying what, and people say, advise me and say, why are you working all these hours? What are you doing this for? And, so yeah, I think, but it's been different people, from teachers to trainers to, to parents to CEOs as well. I've always kind of been drawn to people that have, been successful, but I'm not shy of going to them and saying, how did you do that? And, you feel like you're a bit of a nosy Parker and you're in somebody's business, but if you're authentic with that, then I think you're going to learn a lot. So you have to push. Sometimes you have to push yourself onto people without being a pain.
Yeah.
And then I guess then you can build a friendship. So most of my friends are from the industry.
Yeah,
which I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, right? But most of your friends are CEOs and investors, and it's interesting, isn't it? That you, and I believe if you've got that kind of mentor group, then you're safeguarding yourself from being taken down the wrong path or getting involved in people with problems and issues. And so yeah, I mean, I think you have to choose wisely a little bit these days.
So what I gathered from you as you walked through that was the importance of building relationships with people. You reach out to someone. It's not that I'm asking you of being nosy, but I'm curious. I'm curious about how you presented that presentation or whatever it is. And when we think about leadership, the competence of leadership, one of those key points is relationship building throughout an organization. So you've been able to do that. So in at the status you're at now, you've got investors you're dealing with CEOs, and you're dealing with people that are reaching out to you at a conference or whatever it is. How do you manage? What are some key points in managing a relationship with people so that it appears that you're not always, I'm always taking away, but can it be a two-way street?
Yeah, I think that's really important to make people realize there's something in it for them as well, because people are not just going to give generously. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate to have some people who really did that. But then you've got to be offering, well, what can I do to help you? So as you build, for example, you build a network here of some fantastic, chief learning officers and senior HR guys. And it might be just that I can introduce them to some of these people and, help their business along. So I think it has to be reciprocated, and I think it's really important. But I think that also you kind of play a part at different levels. So, you find different techniques. You talk about the boat, and even for performance appraisals, right? I used to do this like a structured performance appraisal. And then I'd do a day in your life. And the idea was I'd take the guys out. When we had, 20, 30 guys, it was easier to do. And the idea was you go out with them, t-shirt, jeans, and you go into a coffee shop and you'd be part of their work, and they'd work while they were talking. And then they all decided that it wanted to be a day in my life. So they wanted to go out on the boat. So then you're being creative around, well, we can do that. We can have that chat. And I found that then you were closer to them because you were doing something different. So part of the communication skill is finding an environment where people will open and warm to you. It doesn't always have to be a boat, by the way.
Exactly.
You could do this at in a coffee shop, really. But just do something different and be creative around how you communicate and when you communicate and and where. But for me, it's being authentic and consistent, even though I might be playing a slightly different role. You're a bit of an actor in, different levels, but you're still authentic to who you really are and the values that you're kind of brought up with.
I know our catch-up session, we were on the boat, since you mentioned that, we did not discuss any business. We were just discussing life and where we were, challenges we were facing. And it was an authentic conversation. Whereas if I would have come to your office, it would have been a totally different conversation. So getting us out of the realm of so-called, I always tell people, let's do a coffee chat. I don't want to come to your office with all the plaques on the wall. Let's go to Starbucks and just sit there and talk for a while. Yeah.
And look, I think that's the culture of the region. I mean, you've been in the Middle East region for a long time. And I think that conversation has a family, and it's a place of real sort of family, oriented people. And I think that's important to get into a comfort zone. And I think you have easier conversations. And like you say, you might not talk business, but then you'll see somebody again and you might do like 5%, 10% of the business conversation. And then you go, oh, I'll tell you what we could do. Or then somebody will call you back and say, we talked about that. Let's execute this idea. Yeah. So I think that's it's a fair observation.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about maybe teaching a course on the leadership level inside of a university? In other words, giving back. How is Paul giving back? You reached this point in your life. So you're mentoring people, all those kinds of, but have you ever given any thought to maybe a formal kind of giving back, maybe teaching at a university or exploring other ways to do that?
I think that was part of, me, HR and learning. The idea was that we could give back. I mean, the community of HR and training professionals have been part of why I've been successful. Yeah. And so to give back with, a website with information about all the events, the latest jobs, and, and I think that's part of it. From the university, I've done some sessions. Interestingly enough, I have worked with some of the local universities when they've asked me to do things. I'll tell you what I really enjoy. They asked me to come and judge panels when they're pitching. Yeah. And So that's been good for me because I've kind of heard some great ideas and taken some people on.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's, you know, you're judging, but you're giving feedback, hopefully in the nicest way, you know, back to the kids. So no, 100%. I think that's what I think. If you're a kind of you fall into that natural trainer, you want to learn something and teach somebody.
Yeah.
Whether you're getting paid for that or not is irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
That's almost a byproduct. If I would have gone saying I want to take this company from zero to a multi-million-dollar company, which we did, but that wasn't what I came in for.
Right.
I came in because of the ride.
Yeah.
And that was a byproduct of that. The success from a commercial standpoint is a byproduct of the work and efforts that you put in. But no, that's not my intention. But it's but this is why I'm loving this format, because this is for me what it's about. If we can have a chill and a conversation, and anybody can go and find this and then go, oh, this guy said, you know, he did performance appraisals on a boat. I didn't make anybody walk the plank, by the way. So, you know, don't. But, you know, and that creates an idea of, let's take them out. Let's do something different. And I don't mean a traditional, you know, get together where they're on a program. I mean, just do something unexpected. And I think that's kind of, that's the surprise that people love, you know, tell people they're doing a great job. Just out of the blue, just for nothing. And I think those are the nice surprises. And they're probably the reasons that people will stay with you, because you can't be a leader if you've got nobody sort of following your ideas and your vision. So I think, be a bit creative about, you know, how, when and where you communicate and what you do. And I think that's kind of important.
Yeah. So if you were giving a speech, you were the keynote at a leadership conference, and the audience was all CEOs, what would be a major theme that you would talk to them about? So you talked about building relationship with people, getting out of the comfort zone, and just having a conversations about a person's life. What would be some key themes that you would address that group of CEOs?
I think just some of the kind of work-life balance, you know, things that we talked about already. I think that's important. You know, find hobbies and passions and outside of it, whatever it is. And I've met a lot of CEOs that won't do that. So I think that will be part of kind of, you know, what I talk about. And then, of course, because I'm tech, I would talk about the tools. Do they know what blockchain is, how AI is going to affect their organizations? What's happening with VR and, you know, holograms and all the rest of it. And how much do they know about that? But how much have they got interest in that? Because sometimes you're so far into the woods, you can't see the trees anymore. And I think it's kind of just trying to reflect and come back. But yeah, always looking at something that's going to take, you know, some respite in that, because I see so many CEOs that are super stressed. And then what happens, they work so hard all their life. It comes to retirement and they pass in 2 years because they've gone from like 150 miles an hour to dead stop.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've seen a lot of that tragedy. So yeah, there's got to be some sort of foot off the brake and get ready for this. And then really from a business standpoint, it's planning exits and mergers and acquisitions and, you know, getting timing right and knowing the market and research-based things. So yeah, plenty of things that I could talk to and happy to do that in small groups and, you know, one-to-ones. That's what I'd enjoy most, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you told me that, because lots of times when I'm speaking, they'll say, who else could we bring in for whatever it would be? So that's good for me to know. And as long as I've been knowing you, but so that's good for me to know around that. So we talk about the importance of stepping off the gas pedal and just enjoying where I am at this point, you know. So we talked about different ways to do that. And, you know, so when you talk to a coach, CEOs and all those things, it can't be 100% business focused all the time. We have to find a way.
I think that's the idea. And I think having trust in people as well. I mean, you hire this talent, and then there's a reason that you hired these people, and then you're getting in the way. So I think that's another part of it. And if you can take an hour out and do something and know that you've got faith and trust in somebody, and then you go back and say, hey, how did that go? Did you need me on this one? No, boss, I'm good. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get that response because so let them get on with it, right?
Yeah.
You've hired them in the first place.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't work out and the performance does slip, then again, as Jack well said, just make sure that you help them to get out and get something else. And I've helped people get other jobs, after conversations. So I think from the busy CEOs these days who are under so much pressure from owners and stakeholders these days, that it's a tough role, and it's tough to get the right data, have the right team around to make the informed decision, and the buck stops with them. But that's what you get paid for, right? That's part of the course, right?
As they say, that's what the big bucks. But that's what the big bucks are for. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I read some research the other day that the tenure of CEOs is getting less and less. They're staying in that job longer. And one of the findings of that is a level of stress that you can't get away to just take a breath to move away from that, because it's 100% focus. But does it require that for this company to be successful? Or do we find a way to pull off of that? Because I just read the other day, they got a new CEO for Boeing. Now, yes, Boeing has been going through a lot. And I'm thinking, what is this person's mindset coming into this with everything that's going on? Space, the module in space, it was a Boeing product, and now they can't bring the people back for 6 months, 8 months. The passenger jets.
Yeah.
It's 100%. So when we talk about pulling away from that, that's got to be a challenge. But will the board allow that? Will the board be of the mindset that you're talking about, that Jack Welch is saying, leave them alone and let them see what they can do? Or how do we? What advice?
Well, I think it's very difficult to, especially with a new CEO that has to prove themselves. There's no time to do. You can't kind of go, oh, I'm going to do mindful washing up now for a couple of days. So you can't. But there's a cycle of time that you can do that 100%. It's like any sprinter, you get 100 meters and then you go into the 200, and it just gets harder and harder the longer, the distance. So I think that there has to be a time frame of the full on, and then there has to be, this sort of reflect and see where they can step back and get people in. And look, one of the skills that a great CEO has is to hire the right people to do parts of the things that he finds difficult, so I think, again, surrounding yourself with the right people might give you some leverage. But these guys are look, and it's not just CEOs that the life cycle of any employment is getting shorter. Everybody's the kids that are in a job for a week, right? It's like, what am I staying here for? What can you do for me, right?
I had that conversation with my daughter. She's been out of school now, I'm going to say probably 7 or 8 years. And her average tenure is about 2 years. And I said, you're going to leave now? She said, I'm not going to put up anymore, and I'm going to make it official. But she has managed her career. That now she's the global head of marketing. So you look at the way that people manage their careers, the way that we probably have managed it if we were in a corporate structure, versus someone that's just coming out of school. They're not going to stay. They're not going to stay there for that period of time and go on this so-called ladder. It's not happening.
No. So we have to know that. So as long as we know that, and we adapt to that whole change, and then find ways and strategies and implement things that suit that age group and the way that they're not going to stay around. And there's different ways, and you and I talked before this about how coincidence happen and people come around. You might let somebody go, or they leave you after a couple of years, but then they're in a sister company somewhere else and they've grown and they've developed, and you bring them back into that network and that community. So again, I'm kind of keen to maintain relationships even with competition. I've seen so many, M&A activities over the years where you know, somebody will be a competitor and the next day kind of you own them or they own you, or, you know, so you have to be careful of maintaining relationships, even in sort of, you know, corporate competition. But again, I think that's a lot about communication and being consistent with everything. And I think that's probably one of the things that I'll do. I'm consistent with whatever I'm doing. Like you say, I'll walk every day.
Yeah.
You know, and listen to birds or whatever it is. I think that's, and if you're doing that consistently, then you know, it's before you realize it, I think it's going to have a lot of benefits.
So you mentioned blockchain. We've talked about AI. Every article, I just tagged an article I'm going to be reading in a little bit about the impact this is going to have on business. What does your learning journey look like? You're in e-learning, digital, and all that space. How does Paul stay, I'm going to say, ahead of the curve of disruption and innovation that's going on now? What does your learning style look like? How do you stay ahead of things? If I could use
again,
you can never get ahead of it, but I'm saying, how do you stay in the mix?
Yeah, look, you know, you introduced me as the godfather of HR tech and learning and the e-learning guru, and that's not my words. That's coming up from other people, and I just think it's about being inquisitive about and playing. So I'll have the new Meta Quest 3, and I'll get into that, and I'll just play. You know, and play and learn and play and learn. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, I got involved in blockchain through crypto years ago. And then suddenly you'd think, well, what is the affordance of that opportunity in blockchain? And now we're doing credentials in certification for universities. And you know, you're looking for, you know, I mean, these, even virtual reality, these big heavy headsets, people are not going to walk around with those, but eventually they're going to be, you know, smaller, lighter, you know, the AR side of it's going to be better, but you've got to get into the weeds while it's still a big, stupid thing on your face. Exactly. So you understand the capabilities. So for me, it's just being immersive in something. And I think we've already identified that I want to, you know, I'm not going to be good enough. So I have to keep putting the hours and the hours and the hours. And I guess you've just got to find hours in the day. And instead of switching on to some film and Netflix series, you're going to go and play with, you know, AI or you know, blockchain or, you know, whatever, which sounds a little bit sad because I've already said you should be out of the way. But, you know, I think just manage your time wisely. And I think the whole learning to learn is crazy, and whether I'm reading books or audio books or doing podcasts or talking to people or you know, courses, whatever it is, there's all these modalities. There's no excuse anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So choose wisely, find your modality, and then dive into a subject that you think is going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, like I've never. So you mentioned the Netflix thing. I've never been a TV person. I've never been a person to sit for 2 hours or whatever. Because my thought is this: if I give you 2 hours of my time, is there something I'm going to take away from that? There has to be some exchange from my side. You know, like my family will say, you just need to relax. I said, I'm relaxing because I'm reading this article here, and I find this article interesting. That's relaxation. So everybody has their own style.
Yeah. And look, if somebody watches a box set over a weekend and they get away from it all, fine. I don't have a problem with that. For me, it's not worked for me. I've invested more time in developing and growing and learning. You know, and I don't know, again, whether that's a good thing or bad, but I tend to find that successful people, you know, are intrigued. They are, you know, professional learners or teachers, and you know, and look, you know, there's lots of professors that are totally blinkered. They might be teaching business schools and don't run successful businesses, which I think, well, yeah, this is crazy. But you know, you find all walks of life, and I think you have to find your own niche, your own ways of, you know, getting away from, you know, what you're involved with. But I'm like you. I'm not a big series watcher or film watcher. Occasionally, great, but I'll find something to to learn, and I think that's growth. It's it's the old adage of growth mindset, I guess.
So it's funny we talking about that, because I just got a thought of a friend of mine, Debbie Lasky. She's a marketing guru in the U.S., and she was doing a series on leadership, but it had to be through the framework of a movie. And she asked me, what article could I write concerning a movie that had leadership principles? And I chose The Godfather, because I'm a big fan of The Godfather.
Okay.
When you think about succession planning and all those kinds of things, performance evaluation, everything tied into that. And I laughed and I said, could I do The Godfather? I said, it may not seem as if this aligns to it. I said, but let's try that. And that's what I did. So I was able to use that. And I've seen that maybe 50 times, but I pull from that and I equate it to what I'm doing now, or to some of the challenges I may be facing.
Yeah, great. I think as long as you do a survey before you do some learning and development for leaders, that they've actually watched it. because otherwise you're so remote. When they say know your audience, and you go and say, I'm going to talk to you about how business relates to Godfather, they all go, they're all young kids and go, I've never seen that. What is that? What is that?
Because I'm referencing quotes from Fredo or Sonny, and they're like, what are you talking about? As a relationship.
Exactly.
Exactly. So as we begin to close out, I always like to ask the closing question, is that if you could look back on to your younger self, and you talked about, you knew you didn't want to go to the coal mine, and you were trying to figure out what was what advice would you give to your younger self?
God. It sounds like a film, going back and talking to your younger. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably be standing at a distance and going, do you know what? I think you're going to mess yourself up and do the wrong thing. I don't think there is. I think if you can get clear, concise advice and follow a certain pathway and be so dedicated to that pathway, I think it's wonderful. But I think if I look back at my career, I wouldn't have done some of the things that I've done that are kind of slightly off the wall. So it would have been very difficult. If I'd have been an athlete, if I'd have been a professional football player, or, if I'd have gone down that route, and then, my dad would have had his wish of having a rugby playing son, then he would have been the perfect guy to say, this is the advice I give. But because I've been kind of all over the place, and yet it has made good business sense at the end, I wouldn't go there. I'd leave him. I'd have a look from a distance, say, you'll be fine, mate. Just wing it.
One of the reasons that we kind of put this show together, and I was sending a note to Chris Fade from Dubai Bling, because I'm trying to get him on the show. I said, it has nothing to do with Dubai Bling. It has nothing to do with your roles that you play. I want to talk about what you're going through and how you started from here. And he was unable to get into college because his scores were so low. And when he just received an award in London, and he talked about when he looked back on this, he couldn't even pay his DWA bill. And those are the kind of things. So the show was built on starting from here. You have the goal is here. But my God, the crooks and turns you go through.
You're all over.
From this, and you're kind of all over the place. And that was the that's behind this show.
And that's fantastic, because I think that it's kind of finding people that have seen, opportunity through a small window at the right time and then jump through it. And I think that's, we don't know. It's interesting that we're having this conversation. Probably didn't talk about this on the boat about where this whole started, but this is why I love the show, because it isn't necessarily your typical kind of leadership and development program. It's more about very informal conversation to dig deep into families. It's quite emotional. I mean, for me to reflect on this, I don't often get the chance, so I really appreciate that. And I think you'll again get more authenticity and more emotion from that casual conversation, even though we have to forget that we're on a kind of live stream or whatever. But again, kudos to you, man. I mean, you talk about people that influence you, and you're certainly there among many others that I've met. So thank you.
thank you for being a guest on the show. We really, really appreciate it. And I need you to hang on as we begin the process of closing out. And some things I wanted to speak to you offline about. This show will be rebroadcast on Wednesday. We have called Rebroadcast Wednesday, and we'll take a snippet and we'll put this online to pull the show out again. Before we close, I want to make a shout out to some of our frequent listeners. At least it came up here from the YouTube listeners. Peter Pacini, who's going to be an upcoming guest. He started in the arts, theater, and now he's in wealth management. Think about the detours from that. John Self, adding your career, started out as a newspaper reporter. Now he's in executive search and career development. So we're all going through these crooks and turns and all those kinds of things. So thank you so much. Hang on, and we'll talk about it. Okay, cool. Thank you, man.